Hey folks, welcome to yet another update for Avorkarth, or rather Trials of Avorkarth, the game I'm making in my spare time. So here we have yet another episode with the character creation, turning out to be a bit more of a beast than I first imagined, but nonetheless coming along well. Previously we had left with the species selection screen pretty much done, but I've added a few more things and then we'll hop on to the other new sections. So first of all, there are now subsections between all of the text, making it easier to read the details about each species, and this continues on downwards, making it so you can skip sections that are shared between them rather easily and not have to try to read through a blob of continuous paragraphs. Hilariously enough, the statistics part had to be completely rewritten from scratch due to the fact that I wanted to be able to turn certain of these statistics or attributes or ability scores, however you want to say it, on or off at my whim depending on the species chosen, as well as being able to separate them between even kind of sections, so the movement, the ability scores, and the natural magical aptitude. Reason for it is magic, at least in the realm of Avorkarth, is ridiculously rare but also ridiculously powerful. I wanted therefore to make it a further choice, already the choice to be able to increase certain ability scores of your base species would allow characters of greater strength, but in this case magic would bring them to a whole other level, and I wanted to make sure that people could read through, see that that's the fact, and therefore make a further choice. Those of apt sight may have noticed that I've been skirting around the ability scores and themselves, and the reason for that is another new addition, which is the custom tooltips. A lot of fun to experiment and try it out. They're not finished visually, but at least you get a good idea. This also helps the player choose which ability scores matters most to them, as a few things are a bit different than traditional tabletop games. I added a few ability scores to further differentiate species due to the fact that I removed leveling and a lot of other customizations such as classes. I'll get to that in a bit later in the video. But nonetheless, they turned out really well. Moving on. A whole new section was added through skills. This is not done visually, of course, but it is coming along very well. Nonetheless, I'm sure I'll find bugs down the road. So, skill points are viewed by the character's age, so the amount of years they spent on the planet could therefore be translated to a certain amount of skill points, which can be used to get a few abilities that they perhaps mastered in their time or got better. So in this case, a character of 18 years of age would have 4 skill points, and as I get older, then the skill points increases. These can then be spent on either natural or learned skills. Don't worry about knowledge, that's a whole other thing. Natural skills being the ones that everyone can do but are harder to master, so the cost of it increases quicker per rank put into it, versus learn skills, which the cost is less so, as it is not something that is inherent but something that is learnt, meaning a person can put more time into it and improve more significantly compared to their base ability. So this would be like melee combat or ranged combat. Side note towards that, I wanted a game in which combat is equal to different methods of finishing the goal, be it through thievery, skillful hiding, traversal of terrain, or pure negotiations, that kind of stuff. So in Avorkarth, combat is just another skill, so to speak. You can create a merchant character, hire a bunch of guards if you want, or perhaps a diplomat, and get your way through just by sweet talking. Nonetheless, this is to be explored. If you find that your character is, however, a bit above average in terms of how they master such things, like the attribute score, you can click on the exclamation mark and it'll open up an option that will allow you to change your character's base ability. So they can perhaps be determined or skillful by putting more time into their skills, or they can be born a prodigy or even a legend, and that will significantly increase the amount of skills they're allowed. One last thing of note before moving on to the knowledge section would be the age slider up above. As noted previously, the age of a character directly impacts how many skill points they have. This little mark here, however, denotes when a species that can age has reached an elderly age. At that point, a penalty starts accruing on top of certain physical skills. Not all species can do this, as I noted. The unaging species won't have this penalty, but most things, be it dwarves, halflings, humans, will have an elderly age, at which point they start receiving penalties. This is the choice of the player, however, because you can keep going up in age and keep getting more skill points. However, this is at a trading value, so if you want perhaps a scholarly elderly mage, yeah, maybe he's not the best at traversing cliffs, but who needs that when he knows secret passages alongside those cliffs? Moving on, the knowledge section on the right-hand side here is, as with everything on this skill selection section, not quite finished either, at least not visually, but I did get the idea down, which is each culture, the species here listed, and perhaps a few more that aren't listed, because these are the intelligent species capable of empathy, there are lots that aren't, will have their own bar that you can spend knowledge points to get to know. Each number along the track gives your character a better understanding of A, the culture, but also B, the language spoken, giving you certain bonuses and sometimes just the ability to talk to other characters you will meet on the adventure. Notice, however, that the Carthia already has 2 filled in, even though no points are spent. That is because certain species will have their own benefits to their native cultures, where they will, well, giving the idea that they grew up there and have already learnt the language. Perhaps not, in the case of Carthians, every name of every duchy and king and queen that surrounds them, but at least they, know the local tavern and are able to order a beer if they really need it. Okay. Finally, one last section. This is where I earlier mentioned that classes were no longer a thing in Avorkarth. Typical Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, so on and so forth, have you create your character alongside a race and a class, and I thought that a class was a bit restrictive on what the history of your character would be. So I was thinking more of a title or a pathway. This section is not finished entirely. This is just what I had in mind, and I'm still kind of playing around with it, but I figured I'd show it anyways, so that as you spend your points in the skills, certain pathways would unlock. So if you've put a lot of points into disguising and thievery, perhaps maybe a bit of knowledge of melee or ranged combat, you could choose to be an assassin. If instead you just purely choose, let's see, what would I be? Combat, melee, negotiate, persuade. Once again, I haven't fully thought this out. I'm still writing a document about what I want. But then maybe you could be a knight or a crusader trying to bring forth the holy word of Nordanen or something like that. Nonetheless, this would be the final piece of the character creation screen, and I'm pretty happy with how it's coming along. There's still quite a bit to do, more than I thought originally, but this has been quite the eye-opener into the revamp of the Cobalt Cave demo that I want to redo and then move on to the official adventure of the Sunrise Inn. Anyways, thanks as always for watching. May you all have a wonderful day. Cheers.